I think being a ravenous reader is great. I think that, I've learned a lot from books on how to build a business culture and whatnot. So I think really, really reading a lot, especially about a particular, startup, or if you're starting up, just from people that were in that are in your industry is important. And then the same part is really putting yourself out there to reach out to people that are in your industry, or and get a mentor essentially.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Vincenzo Villamena, and I'm going to say that's as close as I'm going to get to pronouncing.
You got it, Devin. You're good.
All right. So, as a quick introduction, he grew up on the streets of New York. In his own words, entrepreneur in high school, sold chocolates, I believe. Went to University of Michigan. Met current business partner while I was in Michigan, but went back to New York. Got a private equity job for a period of time. Didn't like the main boss of the private equity firm and decided to leave. Moved down to Argentina, wanted to change of pace. Initially planned to be there for a couple months, but then came back and then come back, but decided to stay down there for a while. Had a lot of people asking about taxes in the U.S. and started a business and built a website, did some Google AdWords and got that business going, and it's been doing it ever since and building it out. And now has, I think, 24 people and brought the friend down from Michigan. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on to the podcast.
Devin, thank you for having me. That is a good introduction.
Absolutely. So now I've just taken a much longer journey and condensed it into 30 or 45 seconds, whatever it was. But let's unpack that a bit. So tell us a little bit about how your journey started in New York and being an entrepreneur in high school selling chocolates.
Yeah, you know what? I always sort of had this entrepreneur spirit. I don't know, like how if it was the same for you or your other guests, but I always just kind of had this, attraction to, just the entrepreneurial world, right? I was selling chocolates when I was in high school. Just, you saw people selling it for their school teams, and then I, figured, well, I could just go to like Costco down the street and buy all the same chocolates, but sell them a little bit cheaper, and offer some different varieties and flavors that other kids didn't have, and just selling them, right? And I think that's kind of where it started, and then it even went into University of Michigan, and would do random side businesses, etc. And then then when I moved back to New York, also started doing taxes on the side. So it's always been sort of part of the journey.
No, and I think that, it is interesting. I think it goes both ways, the question of whether or not you were born an entrepreneur or whether or not you just, found the opportunity or fell into it. I think everybody has a bit of a different journey. Some people, you're just wired that way. Sometimes you're just saying, hey, I don't have any alternative. I have to find a job or I have to get employment, and this is my best option. So it takes all sorts, and it's always interesting to see how people kind of, when they got started and how they got started into it. So doing that in high school, then you go off to University of Michigan, earn the degree, and you're coming out and you meet your future business partner, but you're coming out of University of Michigan and moved back to New York and did private equity. Is that right?
Yeah. So, at first I started at PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? So I was doing the accounting thing. That was great for a few years. And then, I always wanted to work in finance, right? That was always sort of like the ultimate goal, and like specifically on the, quote unquote buy side, where you're like, buying companies and doing deals. And, it was super sexy at the time to do that. And a lot of, my colleagues at PwC, because we were sort of in like doing a lot of mergers and acquisition stuff, were going into banking and private equity. So it was a, transition, if you will, to do that, but really the dream job. And for a while it was really cool, right? I love PwC. PwC is a great place to work. I have a lot of fond memories there, and I work with like really smart people, a lot of, much of them actually, end up becoming partner and all that. But, again, it was sort of not in my path to do the big corporate world, right? And so, here I had this opportunity to work in this sort of like slick, lean private equity company. Again, they were also sort of, they had money, but they were fundraising, and it was sort of like a place to get in on the ground floor at a private equity shop. Great. And I work with some really good people there. Some people, some of them I still keep in touch with that have done really well and gotten their own exits. But the owner, the main guy, yeah, he was not a pleasant man. And that's where, after some time, after a year or two, and getting, not a bonus paid out, and just things happening, it wasn't all that it was built up to be and that I wanted it to be. And I think that was the problem. And then also it was like during the 2008, 2009 crisis. So things were also just like, teetering, et cetera. But yeah, that was my career path.
So now you say, okay, love the people there, good experience. For a lot of people, that's where they want to end up. And at the end, you're saying it's just not for me, and it's not going to, suit or be what I want to do long term. And so you're saying, okay, I'm looking to make a change or want to make a change. And as you're doing all of that, then, how did you go from that to I'm going to go and flee, not, I was going to say flee the country, but not really flee the country, but go to another country, start over, do something completely different, at least for a couple of months, and then a couple of months turn into a much longer period of time. But what kind of, I guess, I asked the question, but let me back up. What was the final reason or motivation or saying, okay, I'm done, I'm going to quit? Was it, a clear-cut decision? Was it over a period of time? And then how did you go from that to leaving the country and going somewhere else?
Like the short-term answer is that two of my bosses had quit, so there was sort of some writing on the wall there, and the from a career-wise perspective, you like wonder, okay, well, two people quit. They were, and I had to deal with the owner, so there was just some tension, and like I said, it wasn't very pleasant. So, that's the one side of it. But then the other side of it is, well, okay, fine. Like, why quit, in the middle of a financial crisis, and what are you doing? And then my answer to that is that I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just knew that, sometimes when you quit something, you just want to like go all in on it, right? I mean, meaning, if I'm going to leave my job, I mean, I have nothing holding me to New York, then, why not really take a leap of faith and do something like move to Argentina? And part of that was I had a friend that like lived in Argentina at the time, a good friend from Michigan. And he had an open room, and I said, you know what? I mean, what else do I have to do? And really, what do I have to lose? Because I could always go back to, getting an accounting job or getting a finance job in New York and going on that career path. But what do I have to lose by, going abroad, learning a language, and yeah, just seeing what happens. And I had, funny enough, I had some other ideas and opportunities at the time. Like I actually, funny enough, met with the CEO and founder of Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax, right? His name was John Hewitt. And long story short, I was in touch with a franchisor from Liberty Tax, and I go to the franchise meeting, but I was late. I missed it because I was actually working late, with the private equity firm. Fine. I go there and I run into the franchisor, and he's like, oh, well, you missed the meeting, but a few of us are going out to eat dinner with John Hewitt, the CEO. I was like, well, that's cool. Like, thank you for the invite. So they invite me out, and I'm at dinner with all these franchisees, actually, sorry, of these Liberty Tax company, and Mr. Hewitt, and we talk about it, and I was telling him my sort of idea, and that, well, I want to get into taxes, full time, but and I've sort of been doing this like a side business while I'm working, and most of my clients, they don't meet with me, right? They're all sort of like 20, 30 something people. just they're not, it's New York, people are busy. Some people obviously meet with me if they want to, but a lot of people just they just send me their documents or whatever, and I do it like that. And so I kind of said, hey, Mr. Hewitt, like I was thinking about doing something like an online tax practice, and he was like, that's preposterous. People want, their accountant, the accountant's client relationship is, a sacred one, and people want to sit down with somebody, et cetera. And, I just sort of politely disagreed. I'm not, I was invited obviously as a guest, so sort of just, took that feedback to myself. And so, at the end, I just again said, hey, let me go down to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I'm down there again, learning Spanish, just sort of, living this expat life, which I loved. It was, really a dream. And so, then after a few months, it was like, well, what am I going to do? And I still had these sort of thoughts of maybe starting a franchise or a tax office, again, like face to face in like a Spanish neighborhood in New York City. I'd actually, had been in negotiations with the lease before I left, and so on and so forth. And basically, I was in Argentina. I said, hey, you know what? Why go back and get yourself into like a lease? Why not just do this thing online? And yeah, at the same time, people asking me to ask questions. And, I said, all right, let me just build a website. Let me do some Google AdWords. I have a few clients. People down here need some tax services. And it just all came together. I mean, it was this sort of eureka moment, especially with the Google AdWords, where it was like, okay, I have these people locally that need some help. But when I started getting leads, and I'll always remember my first lead, it was some guy in Spain, and I was just so dumbfounded that this guy, paid me to do his taxes, that he found me completely online. And I was like, wow, this could really work. And, just kept on putting more money into Google AdWords and getting more clients. It was this sort of just eureka moment where yeah, this actually could work, and people will actually find their tax preparer online.
So now no, I think that's interesting that, you're not even in Spain, and yet that's where the first, the first client came from, but it kind of identifies that there's a need, or, a market out there, people trying to figure out how to do this. And it's not always, you don't just go to the local tax person, because they're not going to be aware of it. So
exactly.
Now, as you get that growing, so you have the idea, you say, what, people are telling me it's not going to work. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm going to do it anyway, because I think I can figure this out, and I think there's a market for it. So you get the website up and going, you start to do a bit of Google AdWords and getting the name out there. And was it once you started getting that client work, it was just a rocket ship to the top, and it was a hockey stick, and you just had more clients and you knew how to service? Or was it kind of a bumpy start and go and kind of find clients, and it was, or having to pivot and navigate to figure out where those clients are, how to approach them? Or kind of as you started things out and started to get clients on, how did that go, and how was that right?
I think it was a hockey stick in that it was, the clients, and this has actually always been candidly the case for us. Getting clients has never been an issue, right? Everyone needs to do their taxes. Everyone needs a good accountant. And, the niche of international taxes, offshore structures, and just, the depth of knowledge required, and the niche that is, there's always been a real need. Right. I think that, were there bumps in the road? Yes. The bumps in the road happen to do with things like, building a team, have to do with, the back end, right? Like literally building out the website and the software development side, right? Not really software, but the back end development side, right? Like the client portal, and, just the drip campaigns, email marketing, and when you're trained as an accountant and a finance professional, and, then all of a sudden you become an entrepreneur, you have to sort of have your hand in a lot of pots. And I'm pretty good at juggling that, actually. But it sort of, after, a couple years of just like a solo person, it really, again, the client work was piling up, and it really became a just insurmountable, right? And, that's where there was sort of the second, eureka or miraculous moment in this, path, which was when my business partner, my business partner, who, as you mentioned, was a friend at University of Michigan, came down. He came down to just visit me, right? It was my 30th birthday. I had a bunch of people come in, and he came to just visit me in Columbia, right? Just, hey, come down. And that's when, he saw what I was doing. He saw what was happening, and things really changed.
No, and that's awesome. And that's you have that's always great when you start a business and getting the work is not the issue. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't other issues with the business, and making sure it's a good client experience, making sure the work is done right, and bringing on new employees and not bringing on other people. All of those required, but at least you're saying, hey, there's a demand, people willing to pay for it. We are able to find those individuals, and we're able to have that cash flow come into the business. Is a great place to start it out. So that brings us a bit to where you're at today with, you've grown the business. As I mentioned in the intro, you've brought on quite a few different employees. You brought on the business partner that you met while you were in Michigan and going to school. Now kind of looking a bit into the future, the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed, and kind of what's the future look like for you guys?
We're continuing to expand and grow. I mean, basically when my business partner John came down, it was sort of that pivotal point where we started growing the team together, and we balance each other out really well, meaning he does the tasks that I'm not good at, I do the tasks he's not good at, and we really do a balance. And that's sort of where we've grown to 24 plus people. And sort of in the next 12 months or so, I mean, we're going to continue to grow, in particular offering more services to some of our clients, right? Meaning, we handle a lot of incorporations, offshore structures, and then of course all the tax return preparation, compliance. But now we've expanded to do bookkeeping. We've expanded to do, financial advisory and really helping people get their financial house in order. We, do payroll, and really, expanding on those core competencies and help really be sort of like a one-stop shop to a lot of people's needs when it comes to tax and accounting.
Awesome. Well, sounds like, continuing to expand the business, bring on additional clients, offering additional services, and continuing to grow and to service more people and provide them the assistance they're needing, which is a great place to be. Well, as we start to, now as we've went through your, both your journey and a little bit looking into the future, it's a great place to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each podcast. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
I would say the biggest mistake I made was, I'll put two in there. I mean, one was actually, I hired an employee that ended up not working out well for us, and I didn't check his references. And, I think when you hire people, now we have a really good interview process, but it's all about checking references. It's all about really drilling down to who they are as a person, if they're a good fit culturally, and also not just being qualified, but a good fit culturally, and really trying to do your homework on somebody, especially with a small organization, when you're building something up, because you really want to make sure that the person's a good fit. And doing doing references is a big thing. And I'll even add that a big game changer for us was called The A Guide to Hiring by Jeff Smart. That's a great interview book that stresses the importance of references, et cetera, and how to do them. So I think that was a big one. The other thing that I think I learned, and it was a mistake I did, was, at first I wanted to build out the client portal, everything customized. And, then later we ended up doing everything on Box and with the CRM. And there's one thing about, if you want to integrate things and customize the CRM, that's one thing, and we've done that. That's great. But starting everything from scratch when we're not like an app or software, I think was something that was a costly mistake early on.
No, and I think, it is one of those, I think, especially as you get into a business, you're always wanting it to be customized and done just the way. And in an ideal world, you would be able to build everything customized and work exactly how you wanted. And yet, I think that as you mature in the business, you're growing, saying, yeah, we could do everything custom. We could spend a lot of money. We could bring on developers. We could do it just how we want. And yet, is a return there? And does it really have that value? And does it really have that, worthwhile to pursue that? Or should we say, hey, let's get as good as we can with what's already out there, tweak it or customize it if we need to on that, to fill in the cracks, and then otherwise accept that and say it may not be exactly how we want, but it does the job, and now we can focus on the other things that are worthwhile to the business. So I think that definitely it's one that a lot of times people get into that trap, and it's one that you have to often learn, and it's a worthwhile lesson, and one you always have to balance. And sometimes you go customize because it just isn't out there, and then you have a great tool that makes you unique. So I think that's always an interesting dichotomy and balance.
Yeah, totally.
Now, as I jump to the second question, which is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you give them?
I'll give two. Again, one, I think being a ravenous reader is great. I think that I've learned a lot from books on how to build a business culture and whatnot. So I think really reading a lot, especially about a particular startup, or if you're starting up, just from people that are in your industry is important. And then the same part is really putting yourself out there to reach out to people that are in your industry, or and get a mentor, essentially, or get a few mentors, or offer to take somebody for lunch, or go to lunch, or get a coffee, and really pick people's brains, and really build relationships, and get out there and network and hustle and whatever you need to do to either help your startup, or at least help yourself learn something, and it's not about approaching somebody like, oh, I want to sell you this or that, but really more from like an informational standpoint, and understanding what their experience is and whatnot. And I do the same thing. I mean, people approach me about stuff, and I always give somebody the time of day, if they're trying to learn about my industry or whatnot, because I know that I was there at one point, and I was asking people for help. And there was a lot of people that helped me, and
I think that's a great takeaway and a great piece of advice. I mean, I put this too. I think learning from best practice in the industry, what others are doing, continually accumulating knowledge and other ways implementing it, definitely gives you, a leg up. I would also add to that, it's also great to expand outside your industry, because a lot of times your industry gets stuck on doing it a certain way, or thinking about a problem a certain, or taking a certain approach. Sometimes it's the best way, and if they made all the hard mistakes, and you don't need to recreate the wheel. But other times it's also like, if I were to take the legal industry, sometimes the answers to why you're doing it this way is, well, we've been doing it this way forever, and that's the way that I was trained on it, and that's the way I'm comfortable. And yet there's a lot of ways to improve. And so one of the things I haven't found was, for instance, I love to listen to podcasts in general, but a lot of times I get into marketing and sales and other business related ones. One of the ones I love to listen to is on real estate. Real estate has little to do with intellectual property, the legal, but they are great salespeople. There's a lot of competition. They have to cut through the clutter. And it's, that's one example of, they have to, taking some of the ideas as to how they approach client or customer service, cutting through the noise, reaching new clients, is a great way to get additional knowledge. So I think it's that always being willing to learn, figure out what is great in your industry, what's great in others that you can import in, and definitely implement that. And it's a great takeaway and a piece of advice.
Yeah, no, I agree.
As we wrap up, if people want to reach out to you, they're foreign based or they're US based, but they need help with their taxes or money or anything else, and they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, or find out more?
Yeah, so you could go to our website, onlinetaxman.com. We have consultations. Again, anyone who has any sort of question, related to taxes. I mean, we handle everyone, domestic and foreign. Obviously, most of it is related to, people that are either living abroad, investing abroad, foreigners that want to invest in the United States, set up companies, anything under the sun. If you have a question, you could go to onlinetaxman.com and and reach out.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect, and find out more, as it's definitely a service that would be helpful to a lot of people out there. Well, thank you again for Vincenzo for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell, or you have your own or would like to be a guest on the podcast, definitely would love to have you. And you can just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things. Make sure to click subscribe. Make sure to click share, because we want to make sure everybody finds out about these awesome episodes and these great journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else, just go to strategymeeting.com and find some or grab some time with us to chat. Thank you again, Vincenzo, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, Devin.